Hello and welcome back to the worst Warmachine channel on the internet. I'm Dorian and this is Dorian Weekly. And once again, we have a topic that was selected by our content overlords and manipulators over there on Patreon. And what they selected as the topic for this week was to be talking about, should privateer press have a public face? Now, to really trying to kick off why we're even talking about things like this is that if I was to say, try and close your eyes and I want you to think of privateer press. I want you to try and think of Warmachine. What images, what faces come to mind? And as far as images, I'm sure like the logos and things like that come up, but you also probably think about people like Hungerford, like Pagani, like Schick, like Oz. And the problem with this is that all those people I just listed no longer work at privateer press and no longer can be public faces for the company. Although it's still probably funny where even though like these people work at other things, I'm sure whenever people see them, they're still thinking about like Warmachine and privateer press. But the question now becomes, should privateer press get new people to come forward and be these public faces, or was this a mistake and they shouldn't be doing this anymore? So to try and properly evaluate this, we're going to look at the two options. Option one, having a public face, and option two, not having a public face. And then from that, we're going to be looking what are the benefits and potential negatives that are in that scenario, and then hopefully weigh these to try and decide which way is probably, here we are, like we have no business degrees or anything like that. We're going to decide what privateer press should do. But hey, I'm a YouTuber with a camera, so I get to make up these important decisions for them. So to start off and kick this off, let's go with the one case that having a public face is the option we're going to go with. And I think the first thing that we should do to really show this off of what this really even means is if we think of things like logos. If we think of a logo for a company, this is something that you don't need to kind of see the name of the company. If I see this logo, boom, it's making me think of that company. But you can get that same type of thing if you're having a personality. Think of like a mascot. Many different companies have mascots for them. And it makes you wonder, why are they doing this, right? If you can say, okay, I can look at this mascot. I can be looking at Ronald McDonald or a sports team mascot or whatever it is. And when I see this persona, I think of this company. But the same things with the logo. And if that's all I was trying to get, that you see image, think of company, why would I go with one over the other? And between the two, actually, the logo's really easy. Let's just do that one. I don't need to go and kind of like create a personality and all these types of things. Well, there's obviously something else that's there. And to me, the real positive that you get by having this public face, by having this, persona that's associated with your company is it humanizes it. If I'm just thinking about like, oh, there's this company that makes board games, right? And am I going to buy their products? Am I not going to? Well, that really just comes down very simply to, is it a good product that's worth the money? Yes or no? The end. That's what I'm going to be thinking about. Once you go and humanize it, there's something else there. There's almost like a loyalty you might have, right? If you're dealing with this person all the time where you're getting your information, your updates, whatever it is, now if I'm going to get that board game and I've been watching this personality talking about these board games, instead of it just being a strict, dollars to value type thing, that loyalty, that team loyalty, that friendship seems to come in and be like, you know what? Yeah, let's see what that good old person did with this now. Yeah, let's go give that a try. Something like that has that extra value that you don't have from a logo, right? Sometimes that logo does help, right? Maybe you see a logo on there, it's like, yeah, I always trust Sony or whatever brand it is, and there's a whole thing of brand loyalty, but there's something extra as well when there's actually like that human interaction, even though it's really just one way, right? If you were ever to meet any of these personas or mascots in the street, you might know who they are. They have no idea who you are, but still there's that connection you have because they've been humanized. And so that's really is going to be the number one benefit we're going to be getting from this. If I'm someone that I'm trying to decide, do I want to be buying Warmachine? well, I might be strictly be trying to go off some of my, like, okay, how many games do I have? How many friends do I have that play this? However, if I can look into this, I'm like, well, every single week or every single month, good old whoever comes out and they talk about those updates, and I always look forward to what they're going to say. I always think about what I'm doing compared to what they're doing. I'm thinking whenever I see them about how long we've been spending this time together. I remember years ago when they had this hairstyle, when this thing happened to them, what the silly thing they said, and now there's this kind of like this relationship that I want to continue for the sake of just having that relationship. And so I think that's really, really powerful. It's something that you can really use to drive your company, right? If I'm Privateer Press and I'm wanting to try and make those connections and try and make sure that people are buying my product over others, I want to use every single advantage I can. And if it turns out that people like these people and they're going to be forming basically online relationships from them, and based on that there'll be loyalty and they'll buy my things, yeah, sure, let's get this public face there as soon as possible so that this can actually occur. That's all the positives. Let's talk about the negatives, though, of having that public face. And I think one of the things you have to first think about having a public face is how they might change over time, right? If you are something like, Ronald McDonald, let's bring that one up. You almost have to reinvent the character over time as it kind of gets outdated as things go on. But that's one thing, especially if it's kind of like this cartoonish type of creation. What if it's a real person? Well, real people can have real issues. What if the person that you have as a public face does something that is just not very appropriate? Let's say they go out and they are racist. Let's say they go out and it turns out that they hate dogs or whatever it is. These things that have nothing to do with the product are now something that's going to influence your willingness to work with that company because of their perceived relationship with that public face. And that is a risk you have to really think about. Talking about risks with these public faces, what if they leave? That's where we get to these things where we talked about, right? What happens when people make those relationships with people like the Hungerfords and the Schicks and all those type of things, and then those people go somewhere else? Do people follow that loyalty and now okay, well, your product was great, but I want to see what this person does, and I'm going over there. That is a very real risk and something you have to be trying to keep in mind. So with that, let's now go over to talking about the other option, which is, okay, maybe I don't want to be taking that risk. Maybe I just don't have a public face. Well, what are the benefits for doing that? And I think one of the things that you really have to appreciate is how much simpler it makes it for the company and how much resources that saves. If I really want to push to be having this created or highlighted persona that's going to be showing off the company, I need to be spending time to remember to make sure I'm selecting the appropriate person that I feel that will mitigate those risks. I'm going to want to make sure that whenever I'm kind of presenting them to the public, I want this to be very polished and refined so it's going over very well. I probably want to be spending time going over scripts and things like that so that whenever they are having these public interactions, it is going to be giving me all the benefit it can. And as well as those benefits might be, there are resources that are going into doing this that could be going into something else, right? If I have someone that's really focusing on being a public face, that person could be an artist. That person could be a sculptor. That person could be a dev person trying to work out the rules, right? They could be focusing on anything other than just trying to be a face for the company. And all those resources, again, that would go into those different things, like trying to make sure you have this polished product, try to make a script, anything else you're trying to do to try and work with that public interaction could be money, time, resources that are now instead going into making better products, research and development, any of these types of things that just makes your product better. And is that a safer way to go? Maybe it is, right? Maybe you don't want to be taking any of those risks at all and go for the guaranteed of like, you know what? We're just going to make sure that we have really good products. Bring out here with, Privateer Press, there's been some complaints in the past about like, well, there's mispacks, there's issues with your distribution method, there's a few rules that can maybe want to be looking at. I'm looking at you, Gaspy, but stuff like that, maybe be focusing on that. And if those things were fixed, you would then have more people buying your product because it is a better product. Now, how do you weigh which one is better between those two? You really can't, right? One's just a really risk where we're going to be having this public face and we think it's going to be bringing these benefits, but there's also potential risks. And because there's so much unknowns there, there's really the risky one on one side or the unknown on one side, and then the other side, which is guaranteed. Hey, I'm going to be putting resources and time into making my product better, and then by default, it'll be better. So that's the real positive there on that side of trying to make sure you just don't have a face. It's just really your resources go into a very safe way of improvement for your product. And then what are the negatives if you decide to have no public face? Well, then you're running the risk of competing against anyone else that does go with that strategy, right? Any of those people out there that aren't robots and decide that they want to have more of a connection and, they're drawn in by that, you're losing that, right? If I have two competing ones and I go and because, at this point, I haven't really decided on a game. And on this side, they have this public face that comes out and they're always energetic. They're always, really sympathetic. It's someone that you always look forward to listening to. And then on the other side, you just don't. And which product am I going to buy? Well, you run that risk that they're now going to go with that if somebody does actually make that investment. So what is the way that Privateer Press should go? Should they now say like, okay, we don't really have a real public face, let's go and try and develop this? Or should they go the other way, which is like, you know what? Let's just invest in our company and trying to make sure we fill in any gaps that we currently have. Well, before we do that, I think we have to consider one more factor, and that's going to be the idea that it's not really a new company deciding if they're going to be doing A or B. This is a company that decided, or maybe not decided, maybe just kind of the way that things went. They had a public face, and now they no longer do. What does that factor add into this equation? And what it really adds into this is the idea that all these people that have gone in and really fallen in love with your product because of that public face and because of that interaction now don't have that. You have this collection of people that have come to your product because they love that idea of having that public face they can be working with, and now they don't. And when they don't, there's multiple things that comes up in their minds. One, is the company in trouble? Is the reason why you're not talking to me because you're kind of like crumbling in the inside? Do you have nobody coming up to talk to me because you just don't have the staff? You just don't have anyone that's really passionate about the product? I know who is passionate about the product, the people I watched before. Should I be going over to one of the games that they're doing now? And of course, that's not everybody, right? There are the others like, hey, there's actually still lots of people that when I go and I tell them, Hungerford, Pagani, Schick, Oz, like, what? Are those new casters? What is this? Like, there's the people that don't care about that public face whatsoever. So obviously for them, you might as well just go over and say, we're just not going to do a public face anymore because there's really no benefit. But there are those other side, the people that do care. And because of the situation we're in, where Privateer Press was very strong with having that public face, these people were going out to conventions, they were doing podcasts, they were doing interviews, they were doing live shows, and now it's gone. And I think that's a very significant factor that we have to be thinking about here for when we're trying to decide which way Privateer Press should be going forward. And I think given that, right, if Privateer Press was brand new and trying to decide which way to go, I might say, okay, invest, make sure that you have all the resources to make sure you have a perfect product first, and then move over and have a public face. But given that we're in this spot right now where they had a public face and now they don't, I really feel they need to fill that in as soon as possible. Privateer Press is not going down the drain. Privateer Press is not in a spot where there's just nobody there who cares. There's still lots of very skilled and, energetic people that love Warmachine, love the different Privateer Press games, and want it to do well just as much as the personalities that we knew before, but we don't really see them as much. We kind of know their names, right? We know about Faye, we know about Lauren, we know about some of the people behind the scenes, but they're not going and being as public as before, and that's what's making this worry. That's what's actually causing this whole thing. And maybe they have some reasons for this, like, oh, it was the pandemic, it was difficult, we don't have it set up, whatever it is. However, if somewhere in their minds they're wondering, I have two options now. I can now redevelop these public faces, or I can just not have a public face. I think what we've talked about so far, and especially using that real factor that they had it before and now they don't, they have to still have that. They need to take that talent that they have and they need to say, like, hey, we had this podium that people were really like waving around the flag and talking about rah Privateer Press, and now nobody's on that podium anymore. And please, all these people that could do very well on that podium, let's set them up. Let's get a live stream going. Let's get podcasts going. Let's make sure we get their faces out there as much as possible, because there are people who are leaving the game for a reason. There's like, oh, well, there's no longer this public face, and it really is costing Privateer Press business to a significant level. So to me, given all those things, yes, this is something that they need to do. So there you go. There is my coverage of this topic. Let me know what you think about it. But first, before that, I really, again, want to thank my patrons. If it wasn't for them, this would just not be happening, right? It would be happening, but I wouldn't be having this interaction with you. I really like the idea that you're picking these topics. So I'm talking to you and giving you the information you want to have, I have people that are actually telling me specifically, they're not just voting, the people that are at the level saying, you will cover this topic every single month. And then as well, the earnings I'm getting from this, I'm going to get to actually invest in these things and get new cameras, new equipment, new little fancy gadgets into here. I'm going to love it. You're going to love it. And I can't thank you enough for what you've done to kind of help this keep going. So there you go. Thanks for watching. If you want to look into the Patreon, the link is down below. There's some, of course, lots of added benefits there. Otherwise, if you have something to say on what we had talked about here, maybe you agreed with me, maybe you disagreed with me, maybe you just want to talk about a random thing with me, go ahead, post it down in the comments. And otherwise, we'll catch you later. Bye.